This economic system they call capitalism has no moral or ethical core to it. They do better as the people do worse.
Yes. Right.
That right there makes it an inherently sick and twisted system.
A sick and twisted system. Ben Barber of Demos, the left-wing think tank, agrees with that. But economist Russ Roberts says capitalism is only sick or twisted when government gets involved. So what do you mean?
Well, it's okay for government to get involved with courts and enforcing contracts, the rule of law. The problem is when government decides to favor its friends rather than the people at large, and that comes when power is involved. And what government's done with Wall Street, which has been particularly destructive, is take a part of the profit and loss. When they do that, we're going to subsidize recklessness. And that's what we've done over the last 30 years, and it's a disaster.
So, Ben, you largely would agree with Russ on that, but you say government should do more than just adjudicate disputes, and that capitalism itself has big problems.
It does, but I agree with Russ because the truth is we have now socialism in America, but it's not the kind of socialism Russ worries about. It's this, we socialize risk and we privatize profits. Capitalism is a great system. It's entrepreneurial, it's innovative, it's ingenious, and it's very productive. It does those things very well.
Michael Moore says it has no moral core.
Wrong. It does things badly, though, too. It doesn't create jobs necessarily. It doesn't distribute its wealth very equitably, even though it makes a lot of wealth for a society. In pairing with a legitimate government... It doesn't distribute
things equitably.
That's correct. In effect, it allows people, by taking risks, to make a lot of money, and very often it allows people to make even more money by taking risks and then getting bailed out by the government. So that what we need is a system...
We agree the bailouts are bad.
Good.
But so without that, what's wrong with taking big risks and some people making much more money?
Because we live in an integrated society in which the economy and banks and the currency and government are all united. You let GM go down, you let Chrysler go down, you let some of the big banks go down, and the country goes down as well.
You want them bailed out. You like that kind of crony capitalism.
I don't like it all, but I think we need to find ways to regulate industry so it doesn't run risks that the taxpayer has to pay for.
Why don't we try capitalism for everybody? Why do we have to bail out GM? Why do we have to bail out the banks? It would have been great to let them fail. It would have been great for GM. It would have sent a lesson to every corporation that when you make a lousy product and make promises you can't keep, you go out of business, or at least you go bankrupt, you bear a cost.
I'm told America would have, and all those jobs would have gone away.
But well, they wouldn't have gone away.
We wouldn't have an American auto business.
First of all, first of all, if they'd gone bankrupt, the jobs wouldn't have gone away. They would have gotten smaller, which would have been a good thing. Their competitors who had done a better job would have grown. The suppliers everybody worried about would have caused unemployment. They would have sold stuff to the other auto companies now that would have been doing better. Instead, we told people, when you do a lousy job, you can get a do-over. Do-overs, irresponsibility, subsidize is the worst thing we can do. It's a disaster, and we've been doing it now for the politically powerful. For the rest of us, the people who aren't politically powerful, we pay the price. That's not capitalism, it's crony capitalism.
I would think you progressives would be against these bailouts.
We are against them in principle. The reality is, though, we can't simply pretend we're in the 19th century and letting a firm go down is like letting the corner store go down because they're not doing enough business. In that world, someone has to be concerned with the public impact of private institutions.
Well, they're getting a bailout. So let's go to the topic of this show, which is evil bankers. And when I went to the Wall Street protests, I got the sense that the protesters there had no clue about what people on Wall Street do or how they might help create wealth. Here's a clip.
When was the last time those rich people did a hard day's work?
How do they make money?
They steal it from the working people.
Russ, I think that's sort of a sense of what's going on in Wall Street. What goes on in Wall Street?
Well, I think there's two things that go on Wall Street. One of the things they do is good, which is that they take risks and that allows people to innovate. The other thing Wall Street does is it makes bets, often with other people's money, typically borrowed money. That's possible only because we've set a precedent that lets them think that they're going to be bailed out. When you do that, you encourage Wall Street and other investors to invest early. We just invested trillions of dollars in more and bigger houses instead of something else. That was a terrible social mistake that was only done because of government encouragement of both the housing market and the financial sector. That was an incredible disaster. And people say, well, but we're going to get most of our money back. It's not the money getting the money back that's relevant. What's relevant is how much money we've wasted with our capital stock investing it in lousy stuff.
Ben?
What happened is that capitalism, particularly when it's not pressured, when it's not helped, when it's not incentivized by a regulatory state, makes a lot of money for itself and has little or no interest in jobs for society, in an equal distribution, in justice, in making sure that the system doesn't go down.
Justice,
and to do that,
unequal
let's look at just for a minute history. Post-Civil War, no regulation, capitalism destroyed competition with big monopolies. Today, 2008, again, the big banks, Glass-Steagall's gone, no regulation. What's the problem with a fair partnership between democratic institutions and public oversight and private productivity, private risk-taking? We need both. If you get too much state, you get totalitarianism. You get too much market, you get anarchy. The partnership is what has worked.
Too much.
What's wrong
Enough.
with that?
Take your
What's wrong with that?
Your first point. We've gotten rid of all this regulation, and that's caused all terrible harm. Well, this is not my understanding, but I'll let you respond.
Well, the financial sector is one of the most regulated sectors in our economy, but there has been some loosening, and I would argue...
Bush did hire 90,000 new regulators, the so-called deregulatory Bush.
And the Democrat Clinton deregulated through getting rid of Glass-Steagall, which created
They
banks
always
that
have
did this
more
stuff.
regulation. It's not like there's been deregulation.
The problem is that well-intentioned regulation and some not so well-intentioned regulations are going to be subverted by the actions of the industry. And there's capture. The regulators aren't looking out for the best
The industry
of the American
captures
people,
the regulators because they're the ones who work with them the most.
and they have the most incentive. Why would we want to rely on that mechanism, the regulators' good intentions and ability to monitor an industry, rather than allowing people to lose money? What's a better lesson? What's a better regulatory activity than telling people if you make bad decisions, you'll lose money?
But then you got to answer my question, which is in an interdependent, integrated economic world, you can't let some part fail without real risk to the rest. And we've got to have someone looking after the public impact of all of this private money. That's what
let him
government
answer.
does.
That is the road to serfdom. That is the road to an international body that's going to somehow manage this global risk well. We have lots of institutions in the United States that try to global risk, so-called systemic risk. The Fed, the Treasury, others who, we had Fannie and Freddie had their own regulators. They did a terrible job worrying about the things you're worrying about, either because they're incompetent or they had an incentive to keep quiet when their real bosses, Wall Street, were making a lot of money.
You and I agree there, Russ.
So how do you stop that?
I agree.
How do you stop that?
You let people lose money. But let's go to your last point, inequality. Terrible thing. Capitalism breeds so much equality. My understanding is that's part of freedom. A Pew study looked at families, followed up with their kids 30 years later. 68% of the kids born to the poorest fifth of families had risen to a higher income group. Of kids in the richest families, 61% fell out of that group. We're a mobile society.
That's down.
People have a
You're
shot.
right. We were. Look at the latest statistics on mobility. All those European socialist countries that the Republican candidates gets out of kicking are, in fact, way ahead of us in social mobility. We used to be great that way. We are way down.
Is that true?
I don't believe it's true. When we compare the median person in 1975 to the median person today, it's not the same person moving through time. When
It's
we
Oprah Winfrey. She was a welfare mom. Now she's a billionaire.
Or LeBron James, or Sergey Brin, who founded Google. Those people start off poor and they end up rich. And to me, the most dramatic...
You name three.
I'll give you more.
66%.
Well, we're out of time. We can't name all the other ones.
66%.
Ben Barber and Russ Roberts next. What if I printed my own currency? I've got some Stossel dollars here. Should this be legal, and might this actually be a good thing? That's next.